Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here and joining us today to celebrate the life of my mother, Reginia Johnson. I have sat down multiple times in the last couple months since Mom's passed, trying to write out her eulogy. And all I ended up doing was making teacher notes. This is going to be interesting. So in the time that we've had since Mom's passed, Melinda and I have also looked at what we did for Dad's services. And so one of the things that was in Dad's service was we started with the Lord's Prayer. So I'm going to start with that today. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. I've never led a prayer. That took a little bit of bravery. So, Mom was born on January 23rd, 1950.
No, try again.
All right, not January. All right, the one error is out of the way out of the speech. March 23rd, 1950. She was born in a Delta maternity home. We learned that was because Grandma was a high-risk pregnancy, and she stayed with her mother so that she had more comfort and was closer to a maternity home, quick access. At the time, her and my grandpa were living out in Akron. And so that was a lot further away from help. And so she was born over in Delta. She lived her early years of life in Akron, Denver, and eventually she landed in Salida, which she referred to as her hometown. She was the oldest of 3 children. She has a younger sister, my Aunt Vicki, and a younger brother, my Uncle Jerry. During her youth, she did various things. She participated in 4-H. She stitched a outfit for which she got a blue ribbon. She was senior girl 1968 for 4-H. And a lot of her youth was spent out at horse racing tracks. And so she would go out to horse racing tracks because Grandma and Grandpa raced thoroughbreds, horses. I shouldn't say thoroughbreds, they weren't all thoroughbreds. Quarter horses. And so she grew up loving the races. Anytime it was Derby time, you all knew where Mom was, and she was watching it. And so she eventually graduated from Salida High School in 1969. In the 1970s, Mom attended Mesa State College. I believe majoring in automotive, of all things. But the 70s, Mom doesn't remember wouldn't take and tell you about her attending state college. She would tell you about instead meeting my father. So my father was arranged as a blind date to my mom because my Aunt Julie was staying with my grandma and grandpa with my mom and was dating my Uncle Don. And so they arranged a blind date, and she met my dad on October 2nd, 1971. And so I'm sure Uncle Don tells it better, and so does Aunt Julie, so I won't steal from their possibility of talking. But the relationship was cards and letters, trips across to Salida and back, and over to Denver and back. Mom used to be able to tell us when we would drive to Salida for visiting my grandparents that Windy Point was the last place that was long distance. And once you were past Windy Point, you could make a call and it was local to Denver. And she would stop and call. And so my dad ended up proposing to her on her birthday. We found this in a diary, which was March 23rd, 1975. They were married on February 28th, 1976. During the time while she was dating my dad, she met my dad's best friend, Jim. And Jim was the best man at the wedding, one of them. And the reason you all heard Martin, you're late is because I have heard the story probably a billion times. I believe they were headed fishing. And the first time he meets my mom, he's evidently running late because her first sentence out of her mouth is, Martin, you're late. And so it was fitting today he happened to walk in a little late. At a very young age, I used to be able to tell him that sentence, very sassily. And so after getting married in 1976, my mom and dad lived in Commerce City most of the time, although I hear there was this like 6 weeks that they were in New Mexico that was like torture. And they very quickly realized they missed Colorado and came back to Denver. In 1978, I was born. And so we finish up the 70s and we go into the 80s. And with 1980, my sister is born on January 1st. Mom would often talk to people and tell them that she missed her tax deduction because that's a New Year's 1st baby. She was due well before. During the 80s, she raised us kids. She was a stay-at-home mom a lot of the time, but once we were both in kindergarten, Mom had some free time on her hands. And so when she wasn't busy videotaping everything that was on the TV, and anybody that remembers checking out videos from my mom, there was books of a library. She was Blockbuster before Blockbuster. And so when she wasn't doing that, she started working for our neighbors at Magic Block 2, a Chinese restaurant in Federal Heights. I can remember Mom knowing all her customers by name and knowing just the people and the different older community that would come across for lunch specials that were from the Holiday Hills Trailer Park. She knew them all by name, knew their orders, treated each one like family. And I started getting to see my mom outside of just our direct family. And so as she works through Magic Block, I start seeing my mom in a different capacity. And I start seeing the angel everybody else refers to. And so as we end the 80s, Dad ends up starting to get sick. And at first it's that we don't know what's going on. And then it progresses to a diagnosis of cancer. And so in the early 90s, 1991, my father passes away. And so my mother ends up with this immense challenge. She has 2 young daughters, that one's in 7th grade and one's in 5th. And she's now suddenly on her own a little bit. And so she has the challenge of raising 2 teenage daughters on her own. I'm pretty sure that that's a challenge to anybody. Well, how Mom handled it was with the amazing grace and the amazing ability that she had. She was involved in everything we did. My sister begged for months to take and raise guide dog puppies. And we eventually ended up raising 7 of them. And Mom's original plea to my sister, I believe, was, how can you give back the puppy? Well, we just had loss of Dad. We can handle handing back a puppy we know we're going to hand back. And so it ended up being that we start raising guide dog puppies. The other new thing in Mom's life is she starts working for Adams 12. Adams 12 becomes a huge part of my mom's life. She had went over and volunteered and helped out at Northmore for years while us kids were young, often chasing Sandy Lizotte home when she was staying out too late, my music teacher of elementary school. And they're working way too hard on the weekends. And she got to know other parts of Adams 12. So she starts originally in the old Holstrom building as a cook, helping out serving lunch. And then she, 1 year after my father passes away, she gets the position at Huron Junior High. And so she starts in the kitchens in Huron. She quickly progresses to being a para for the SPED department. And then she ends up in the front office and becomes part of the face of the building. I can remember walking into Huron Middle School. It was by the time Mom, I believe it was 40th birthday. We walked in and torched the building. 50th birthday. We walked in and surprised my mom with cake candles. I'm pretty sure that should have set off the fire alarm. And I rounded up every kid in the hall. I said, hey, it's Miss Johnson's birthday. I had a mob, no problem getting to sing. And we ended up getting to sing a happy birthday to her. And I just watched the people rally behind my mother of wanting to celebrate the person she was. And it was interesting to reflect on the fact that she's always just been Mom to me. And yet so many others ended up with that. During junior high in the early 90s, Mom adopted many of Melinda and I's friends and became second mom. Tracy's nodding in the back. Tracy and I grew up together through middle school. Junior high back in the day when we were kids. And so Mom would be Mom to anybody that needed a mom. whether they had an actual first mom or not. And so she just adopted people. Everybody to her became family. And so as we progress, she goes from her Huron family to she ends up at Northland High School. And so she ends up at Northland High School in 2000. And so she starts her journey at Northland. She's in the attendance office, helping out, encouraging kids to be at school, encouraging kids to take and just try their best. I started running into kids that knew my mom, and they'd go, "You're Regina's daughter." And I'd go, "Uh-huh, and you are?" And so she went through being at Northland. She eventually retires from there. During the 2000s, she also starts welcoming grandchildren into her family. So we start with Justin, that's the oldest, in 2001, Tegan in 2002, and Lorelei in 2010, and many other bonus grandchildren from other marriages and different pieces that we've had. And mom just adopts everybody. So it went from being her sons and daughters she adopted to now grandkids that she's adopting and taking into. In 2012, mom ends up taking an adventure. And anybody that watched her Facebook posts from 2012, she goes up and she starts volunteering with me up at the Humphrey History Park and Museum. It's a small park history museum that was in Evergreen. Mom called it her oasis out of Dodge. And so she starts helping out up there and learning the story of the Humphrey family. Sadly, the museum is no longer there. But mom enjoyed every weekend. We would go up every Saturday and spend time up at the museum volunteering and just giving back to the community up there. Mom eventually retires from Adams 12 in 2015. Well over 20 years of service in Adams 12. And she stayed retired 6 weeks? Roughly, I think it was. I don't even. She ends up doing light housekeeping duties for those that can and helping out with people. Ends up meeting amazing people that touch her lives as well as they touch hers. She met Jim Birdside and Gwen. She met Betty. She met several others. There's a list. And so she still has that mentality even after retiring, I need to work because I'm going to give back. She eventually takes and decides to find something a little more sitting. She's getting older and has decided a sitting job would be nice again. So she ends up applying in 2018 to complete plumbing and HVAC and ends up working there until she passes. In 2018, she also welcomes her first great-grandchild, Dominic, and second great-grandson was born just a month ago. In looking back at mom, I've done really good so far, I haven't got to here yet. Mostly what I remember is all the people that would walk up to me and say what an angel my mom was. And as a kid, you never quite realize what truth that is. And so, in starting to hear all the stories from other people, in realizing what I'm missing now that she's gone, she really was an angel among us. And so, I've done so good. I've practiced saying words like this. I shared with my students as I was teaching the experience of mom being sick in the hospital and everything, and they would deal with me getting a little teary-eyed. I've done pretty solid. But I've realized that mom really was an angel among us. She didn't know a stranger. She didn't know somebody that she wouldn't hand whatever they needed to them. She always had a hug. She always was ready to listen to whatever anybody else needed. I can remember during COVID, mom going shopping for other people, and I'm like, hey mom, you're the high-risk population. You're not supposed to be there. And yeah, that wasn't listened to because she felt she had other people to take care of. And that's just who my mother was. And so I know those that are sitting here have been touched in the same way, I'm sure. I know that from so much of the outburst of the community that has showered my sister and I, mom was well loved by everyone. And so I am happy to say today that we celebrate her. And so I am going to play the slideshow I put together. And then there's a couple more people that get to talk, and then we'll open it up for anybody that isn't already on the list. So we're going to hope this works. Technology has been fun. My father likes messing with it. See if this works.
Well, I know you're up in heaven, but damn, it hurts like hell. 'Cause I'd just be pretending if I said anything else. And I know God don't make mistakes, but this sure feels like one. That won't change the facts, that won't bring it back. So I'll cry 'cause it's over, smile because we had you. Packed a whole lot of living even though it ended all too soon. And in time I'll start healing, but even when I get that feeling, no matter where I go or what I do, I'll never not remember you. Thank God for all the memories and pictures on my phone. They don't fill the empty, but I feel less alone. And I know you're with the angels, right where you belong. 'Cause you were one to us, you left a legacy of love. So I'll cry 'cause it's over, and smile because we had you. Packed a whole lot of living even though it ended all too soon. And in time I'll start healing, but even when I get that feeling, no matter where I go or what I do, I'll never not remember you. You lighten up a whole room like that. You made us think, made us feel, made us all that. You always giving that shirt off your back. I miss you bad, I miss you bad. So I'll cry 'cause it's over, smile because we had you. Packed a whole lot of living even though it ended all too soon. And in time I'll start healing, but even when I get that feeling, no matter where I go or what I do, I'll never not remember you. Oh, I promise you, I'll never not remember you. Well, I know you're up in heaven, but damn, it hurts like hell. 'Cause I'd just be pretending if I said anything else. And I know God don't make mistakes, but this sure feels like one. That won't change the facts, that won't bring it back. So I'll cry 'cause it's over, smile because we had you. Packed a whole lot of living even though it ended all too soon. And in time I'll start healing, but even when I get that feeling, no matter where I go or what I do, I'll never not remember you. Thank God for all the memories and pictures on my phone. They don't fill the empty, but I feel less alone. And I know you're with the angels, right where you belong. 'Cause you were one to us, you left a legacy of love. So I'll cry 'cause it's over, and smile because we had you. Packed a whole lot of living even though it ended all too soon. And in time I start healing, but even when I get that feeling, no matter where I go or what I do, I'll never not remember you. You lighten up a whole room like that. You made us think, made us feel, made us all laugh. You always giving that shirt off your back. I miss you bad, I miss you bad. So I'll cry 'cause it's over, smile because we had you. Packed a whole lot of living, even though it ended all too soon. And in time I start healing, but even when I get that feeling, no matter where I go or what I do, I'll never not remember you. Oh, I promise you, I'll never not remember you.
Hey. Are you ready, Jim? You want to be next?
Absolutely.
All right. Hi.
Whoa. You guys got it.
It's on.
It is?
Yeah.
It is? Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good.
I didn't want guys, relax. This is going to be short and sweet. I'll try to make it so I don't bore you. A lot of this is redundant, just because the traits that Krista has mentioned were there for us all the way through her life. So, given that, when Gary organized a fishing trip for the three of us, I was naturally late. I had never seen Ginge before. The first words out of her mouth were, "Martin, you're late." I liked her already. I often think of that moment. I soon came to know how special she was. Her humor and passion affected all of those around her. She definitely made lemonade out of lemons for all of us. Her passion for life was unparalleled. She made everyone around her feel like they were special. It was a special honor for me to be at Gary's best man at their wedding. Just remember, she is still here. For all of us who had the pleasure of knowing her. And please, please never forget the message she gave to all of us. Next.
Got it, Sean.
God, he's even taller.
To put it simply, Reginia was an angel amongst us. She was by far one of the most understanding, compassionate, and generous people that I've ever known. She was a woman that would go out of her way to help me as long as she could tell I was trying to help myself. Though, as they say, dynamite comes in small packages, couldn't have explained her any better, because when she did have an opinion, by golly, she was going to let me know it, whether I wanted to hear it or not, no matter how old I got. I had gotten to know her when Melinda and I started dating in our teen years. There were times that I definitely was not her favorite person, and I'm sure she thought Melinda was crazy for dating me. Growing up, my home life was not the best. Regina knew this, and even when I wasn't her favorite, she still gave me a safe place to go on more than one occasion. Throughout the years, even after Melinda and I had separated, I still kept in touch with Regina. When times got hard for me financially, I would ask her if I could help out with any work around the house to make a few bucks. She would always think something up, even if it technically didn't need to be done. I'm sure more helping me more than me helping her, and she would always insist on getting a meal together followed by a hug. She definitely saw me at my lows. The greatest thing though is that she was able to see me at my highs. After I had gotten my life together, I'm sure that there was a bit of nervousness when Melinda had told her that her and I had started dating again so many years later. I fully believe that she saw the happiness and love that Melinda and I have for each other, and that I was going to work to be a steady, consistent, and loving husband to Melinda. The fact that she passed before our wedding, June 24th, was tragic, but something that I will always carry in my heart is knowing that she was genuinely happy that we were going to be married and that we had her blessing. Regina, thank you. Thank you so much for being Thank you so much for being the ray of sunshine. And the guiding light that I needed so much, for always being there to listen. I make you this promise. I promise to continue to work daily, to be the person and husband that I hope you would want for your daughter. Please continue to watch over all of us as we build a life that you can be proud of. Love, Sean.
You up? Do I stop this? Do I stop this and redo it?
Like my sister, I sat many times and tried to write something to say. Unlike my sister, I'm going to be the one that's going to be emotional. I tried to think of things that I could tell you about my mom that you might not know. Problem is, she knew many of you in the same way. Her friends became her family. Strangers were her friends. It was a little tough to learn to not trust people when Mom always was willing to give someone a chance. The one thing that hasn't been said yet, I guess Krista touched on it a little bit with the COVID. Mom was always more concerned with every single one of us than with herself. Even in the hospital, when she was extremely sick, she was asking about others. We had a family friend that we had known since we were very small, who had been battling some health issues, and Mom constantly asked about her. How is she doing? Mom told me one day, she says, say hi to Frank. And I'm like, say hi to Frank? Well, a friend of mine that I grew up with that I've known since kindergarten, her dad had had a fall. She wanted me to make sure that he knew she was thinking of him. That's just the way that Mom was. Looking around this room, I'm sure that I can ask how many of you had received cards, anniversary, birthday, thinking of you, Christmas, retirement, new baby. I mean, every card, and trust me when I say that we have found her stockpile. There were multiple boxes. I think she misplaced them at times and started a new one. And it was organized. So there was a list at the front of all the birthdays, all the anniversaries, and they were in order by month. And so at the beginning of each month, she would go and she would pick out the cards, and she would personally handpick each of those cards that she sent every single one of you. And then she would make sure to put them in for that month so that she could make sure to send them out. And that was just one of the small, tiny little things. And I can tell you that in going through her home, which we're still working on doing, that Mom cherished each and every one of you, because we are finding cards and letters and gifts that are labeled as to who they came from, you know, what it was for, things like that. And she didn't get rid of those things. They were all still very much a part of her. And she befriended each and every one of you in different ways, but she touched lives and lives touched hers. And the one thing that I definitely want to make sure continues is that everyone continues to share her story. Because that's how she lives on. So please don't hesitate. If there comes a time where someone needs that guidance or that angel that we had, to share her story with them so that they know that there's always someone out there who's looking out for you. There's always someone out there who cares. And there's always someone who will be positive for you, because even in the most difficult times, the most difficult situations, even if she couldn't fix it for you, she would remind you that she's there. She would remind you that it's going to be okay and that you're going to get through it. When Mom was sick in the hospital, I was her medical POA. And when you have those conversations with your loved ones about, oh, you know, I need someone to be my medical POA, never do you imagine actually needing to use it. You never imagine what it will mean for that person to actually have to make those decisions. And the reason I was her medical POA and Krista was her financial POA is I know some medical terminology from my vet tech days, and Krista's the math teacher, so finances went to her, because we know that math and I don't get along. Math doesn't happen. But I knew my mom and I had had the conversations that if she could have a good quality of life, that no matter what, throw everything at it. You know, if it meant her getting better and her getting to see her grandkids, great-grandkids continue to grow and thrive, if it meant getting to spend more Christmases and holidays with her family, and when I say family, I mean each and every one of you, then that's what she wanted. And so when doctors came to me to make decisions, that was my response. And the first night in the hospital, when they kind of talked to her and they told her how bad things potentially were and things like that, and there was at that time the talk of the potential for death, her response was, oh, no, that wasn't happening. Because her intent every single day was that she was going to be better and she was going to get back to each and every one of you. At one point, when her and I were visiting, when she was actually at the acute rehab center, she thanked me for being her warrior. And that's a statement I'll never forget, because I just thought I was doing what she would have done for me. You know, it's something that if I had ever needed her, anytime I ever needed her, it didn't matter if it was in the middle of the night, it didn't matter if it was, you know, if she was at work, you know, family to her always came first. And so I only thought that I was giving back to her for everything that she had given me, but I realized how much it meant to her to know that we were there by her side. And to know that all of you, even though you might not have been there directly, were also there with her. Your thoughts, your prayers, all of those things meant so incredibly much to her. And even the people that I don't know personally in this room, I know because Mom spoke of you as family. The same way that some of you may not know Krista and myself or the kids, but you know us because Mom spoke of us. And so as much as I would like to say that I was her warrior, she is one of the most brave and courageous and kind, giving women I have ever met. And I hope that in my life, if I can be even half the mother and grandmother that she was, then I know that I'm doing well. Did you just want me to open it today?
Yeah.
Is there anyone that would like to come up and say a memory or phrase?
Regina was a good family friend. She was a good mother figure to me and my family. She was my puppy raiser for my dog Kenji. She treated my dog well, so I really appreciate Regina for that. Regina was always there for me and for my birthdays, and I really. And I know that she always stopped whatever she was doing to help out me and my family whenever we needed her the most, and I appreciate her for that, and I hope for the best for her family, and I know that she's watching us right now, and she knows that we love her very much. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good job, you prepped notes.
So Regina is my aunt, my only aunt. My mom and Aunt Ginger cousins, and then my dad and Uncle Gary are brothers, but I promise it's all legal. She gave the best hugs. Honestly, my earliest memories of her hugs. I remember, honestly, when I got a little bit taller, that I was actually taller than her. She was one of the first people I outgrew. Not by much, but. My sister said you knew you were loved when you were with Aunt Ginge. Just her all-encompassing hugs and just interest in our lives. She was kind to everyone and had so many friends. I remember visiting her house across from the elementary school when we were young, and just all of her neighbors were her family, you could tell. She was tiny, but that didn't stop her from doing anything. She was so spunky and feisty and yet kind and loving.
Dad needs to chime in on the text.
I remember the combined birthdays at her house in January. Melinda's, Sherry's, and mine. We'd all celebrate together. They were awesome. I remember 3C salad. If you haven't had that, then you are missing out. Here's the recipe, just in case. Cherry pie filling, cottage cheese, and Cool Whip. It's amazing. I made it for my kids like a month ago.
Yep.
She'd always bring it to the Akron Fair. We'd kind of have mini reunions there every year and watch the races. That was kind of everything that we would do growing up together. Even as I grew older, we moved apart to different states, but I would get messages from her on Facebook, just tagging me on posts, different things like that, letting me know that she still cared and thought about us. I know she'll be missed by many, including me, but I'm so glad for the full life that she lived, and I have no doubt that she'll be a guardian angel to everyone. Where else would she be? It only makes sense. Thanks.
Good afternoon. My name is Eric Andre. I taught at Northern High School for many years. Reginia was more than a colleague for me. Was a good friend. We have many good peeps in our clan. Some of us are here today, but she was one of the pillars of the temple. A force to be reckoned with, but a force of kindness, a force for good. And like you all are today, in all our diversities, she was kind to everyone. And didn't matter your age, your race, your beliefs, didn't matter to her. And after she left Northland, we stayed in touch and we would go out to eat. We could talk about anything, the mundane, the deep, talk about our families, our struggles. And I'm very proud to say finally that I took her to a French restaurant for the first time, so voila. So, adieu Reginia, and thanks to all of you for being here. She touched all of us. She'll be missed. Thank you.
So I'm a teacher that doesn't like public speaking, unless I'm teaching. But I'm Tracy. I grew up with Krista and Melinda and Regina. I had the pleasure to meet Gary maybe once or twice. I met Krista in 7th grade. I was with her when we got the word that Gary passed away while we were in school. But Regina was my mom growing up as well. I grew up with just my dad. And my dad wouldn't have made it without this family. My dad had no idea how to raise a girl on his own. And if it wouldn't have been for them, I don't know who I would be and who my dad would have been. Regina taught me how to drive. I got my driver's license in her car. How many ever years ago tomorrow, because it's my birthday tomorrow. You were probably there.
Too many to count, we're not admitting that.
Yes, exactly. Years and years of marching band back and forth. And I was just thinking, how many guide dogs did we try to guess the names of before they came, because we knew the first letter. And you mentioned the one, and I never knew that name. I mean, I knew the name, but we never guessed.
Yeah.
You mentioned rescuing us whenever we needed. Butte, Montana, in the middle of October, in the middle of the night. That happened. She was present at my dad's funeral. She was present at my wedding. Last time I saw her was at Costco, and I was with my son, and she got to meet him as a little baby. And I'm so sorry, but you know what? She sure held a place in everybody's heart. And she's here looking at us right now. And thank you. I don't like to talk in front of people, but I needed to get this out.
My name is Larry. I got to know Regina late in life, the last couple of years. I'm a plumber, worked for Complete Plumbing, and she was our office manager. And she was an angel. Really a blessing to us. She had a hard job, a lot of stress, a lot of phone calls, a lot of computer stuff, a lot of stuff that I wouldn't have wanted to touch, but she did really good. And she did know how to make lemonade out of lemons, that's for sure. I lived down Port Monument, so we didn't get to see one another in person very often, but we spent many, many calls and texts on the phone together. She was always encouraging, always a blessing, always a very gracious lady. Our company has just been so blessed to have her, and she touched all of our lives. She knew birthdays, anniversaries, holidays, sent out cards. I've got 2 cats, and they eat out of little food dishes that Regina gave to me for the cats. It wasn't just an act, it was her life. And I know she put her trust in Jesus, and I'm going to see her again someday soon. This chapter is done. She's no longer working in the office. The page is turned, and she's got a bright new life ahead of her. Thank you.
Okay.
I got one story, a funny story. Regina's next door neighbor. Her and my mother became best friends. So when my mom couldn't handle me, she got Regina. And I was a really smart addict back then because Regina was this tall. I'd ask her if she wanted a step ladder so she wouldn't hurt her neck yelling out. That made it worse. But the funny story is, my little brother had ADHD, and he snuck in Regina's house and threw a cup of water on her. Regina ran to my house and threw a cup of water on him. In the front yard, they both had their hoses. Regina finally got tired and ran in the house. My little brother grabbed her hose and ran in the house after her. They became the best friends you would ever see in your life.
Encourage you, if you don't want to step up to a mic, we did place at the back of the at the sign-in table. There is share a memory. I would love to take and have those. One for little guys like John that will not get to know great grandma, but also for us, because so many of you have stories I haven't heard about mom, and they're just heartwarming and they're wonderful and amazing. And I would love to have as many as you'll give me. If you're a person that doesn't want to write it out or that page isn't quite long enough, you can feel free to find us on Facebook or ask us for our numbers. We'll gladly take a file if you want to type it or whatever, because it becomes priceless. One of the things Linda and I found in Mom's house is a diary, and it talks all about meeting Dad and about her early years of being a mom. And suddenly in '83, the diaries stopped. Don't know why. Might be the toddlers. But it was amazing to read in her own words what she had saw and what she was. So to have firsthand experience of people that share their experiences of mom. I understand not wanting to talk in front of a group. I do much better talking in front of kids. I'm learning adults. But it's hard to stand up here. But if you want to at least share a memory, we encourage you guys to do that. If you want to talk to other people and socialize a little bit, feel free to. I will remind you, if you're choosing to go down to Fort Logan, we need to be lined up down at
Staging area B.
Area B.
No later than 2:15.
No later than 2:15 for Fort Logan. So we did allow enough time for people to go grab lunch. There is local fast food here. There's Wendy's, Sonic, and Taco Bell all to the north on Sheridan. Otherwise, Google's really good at finding food. Panda Express is a little further up. And the good news is school's not in session, so it's not full of high schoolers. I will say a gracious thank you to, this is my school I teach at, and they were lovely enough today to allow me the space to house this today. And so thank you to my executive director, Janice and friend, and the fact that my school was gracious enough to let us house this here. So I'll give one more opportunity. Anybody else want the mic? All right. Feel free to socialize, talk amongst yourselves.